Hello, we are late with what writers should know. One of the things they should
Always
know is
fashionably late.
windshield replacement is not as fast as you think it's going to be. So, I'm Erica Lance. I'm the author and CEO and founder of Four Horsemen Publications. And with me is one of my favorite authors and co founder at Four Horsemen Publications, Valerie Willis. And today we are talking about covers that sell. Genre plus trope equals magic. So, what are we talking about, Val?
That I always this is something, and it always takes them back and I get that bulked look or reaction or knee jerk reaction, right? And as a designer, both for freelance and for publications and stuff, I always remind authors that first off, this is a marketing tool, not what you dreamed about, unfortunately. And two, don't fall in love with it, because as the market transitions and trends start to rise and fall, you're going to want to change your cover often. And one of the best examples I love to give people is look at a long-term author who does a lot of standalones like Stephen King. Look how many versions of Pet Sematary and The Stand that we have seen. He has covers that match every time there's a TV adaptation or movie, and then there's covers that match the current trends. And I think there's like over 16 versions of The Stand alone that you can find out there sometimes.
No, it's true. And one thing I always say is, people say never judge a book by its cover. Everybody judges books by their cover. Because yes, maybe you can get somebody to pick it up and read it, but they have to see it. And there's a subconscious thing with readers people don't realize is the genres of books you read by the covers. Like, if you're a paranormal romance reader, what those covers look like. If you're a fantasy reader, what those look like. I read a lot of true crime, mystery, suspense, serial killer type books. I know what those covers look like. There are particular looks. So although you might be like, I want to have this thing because it has massive significance in the book, that does not, your book might not sell because you've done that to it.
And it's crazy because certain fonts are reserved for only certain genres or types, right? That's why you'll never see script writing on a horror novel. But at the same point, you won't see splattering of blood or anything in large like impact in very bulky sans serif fonts as often as you do on a horror or even a crime mystery novel as you do on like a fantasy novel, right? So it's interesting to see how much real estate. And here's another cool thing that I've noticed. And Stephen King's books is a great example. If you look at his earlier books, look how small his name is. It's like you have to search for it almost in those earlier books. And now his name is so large that you have to search for the title, because at some point when an author gets to certain fame level or certain buy mark, I guess, so to speak, they start selling you as a brand. And that's also something that you should keep in mind when you're creating your covers for all your books, that you also should imply some branding when it involves you as the author on those covers a little bit.
Yeah, and I'm just going to quickly, we do this. I'm going to share my screen because one of the things that this is just from a Reddit article, but here are all the Pet Sematary covers, some of them, not even all of them, right?
Mm-hmm.
So you look at, there's this one with a gravestone, and then there's one with lots of gravestones and an evil face, and then gravestones, and then now a major motion picture, and then a screamy kitty cat and a person walking in the background, and then
again,
this is amazing.
Look,
It's just got a black cat on the cover.
Right. Like that second one on the top row is a prime example of what after a while they start selling you the author, not necessarily the book. So it's pretty wild to see what cover design looks like at a glance half the time.
Yeah, and it's something that authors should keep in mind, that it's great to fall in love, but you want to be with either you yourself or with a company, a publishing company that's willing to look at, okay, where are the trends changing? Like one thing we noticed as an example of a trend change, and I know you've got some examples of books you're going to share with everybody, is people coming off the covers, like real looking people versus illustrated people or stuff like that on romance covers. It's gone from the people to maybe shadows of people or the backgrounds of the area. Like,
And
you know,
that's because of laws and regulations that are being passed in certain states, right? We now have states that will ban books or make it where you have to card or put that book behind a beaded curtain, as they say, for 18 plus, all because you have a shirtless dude on it, or people embracing in a arousing manner or sexualized way, right? And because of that, you are seeing all the big guys shy away and completely go to a templated almost look
yeah,
across most of their books, or trying to be a little bit more abstract art. What to see how that's going. They're still experimenting quite a bit, and once they find a book that sells good, they kind of cookie cutter that cover, and we're seeing more and more of these mimicking covers. Now, that doesn't mean that in the indie world and indie author world that they're sticking to their guns with those, but the problem is, I can't, like, you've seen the Sleeping with Sasquatch book. In fact, I should have grabbed that one. So this was the earlier novella. And though there is, if I don't hit the mic a billion times.
yeah, no, she's talking. I love it. She's talking.
But like this cover I couldn't use in my Facebook ads because it got flagged for being erotic.
I just want to point out they're just an embrace. There's nothing
And it's
else.
darkened. She's got a bra on. Yes. So, and it's crazy because then I see other ads that are running and I'm like, how much money did they put down for Facebook to be like, you know what? It is okay, And sadly, that is also a thing. And how your cover impacts your ability to reach your audience and run those ads and marketability, right?
Mm-hmm.
There are even Book Funnel, they will pull you from a campaign if you don't have a clean, professional looking cover, which is intense.
Why don't let's show some examples, because you have, for instance, the earliest example of Cedric the Demonic Knight, right?
Yes. So this is circa 2010. I can't believe this book's been out like 15 years.
I know, it's so weird when you look at it, right?
I feel old. So yeah, I wanted a fantasy vibe, dark fantasy. So at the time, a lot of people were doing like a lot of castle themes, a lot of medieval fonts, and shadowy things. So that was, the earlier rendition. And then a marketer's like, no, you should do paranormal romance a few years later.
It is
after
a
this.
paranormal romance story. It's got a lot of fantasy, but it is a paranormal romance story.
It is. So, so we did paranormal romance. Now we got the foo-foo font. We got sexy eyes. But this trend, interestingly enough, started becoming a bigger trend in the horror and serial killer vibe. So it fell out of paranormal romance vibes. Then, as we were saying, we went all in on the next trend, or closest trend, and that was foo-foo font still. So if we carried on, it doesn't mean you have to, if I can just raise it correctly, carried on some of those font elements. So you don't have to completely abandon things. And you saw that in the Stephen King ones. But then we did this, and then we had those laws and things that were impacting books and people being able to carry the books because of the shirtless chest. So, and then of course you guys are going to notice this matches a lot of what we're seeing now, right? So that would be the transition.
The mystical, magical, but indicating that it's paranormal, and it's got the romancy part, but that's what you're seeing is a lot of symbolism now.
You brought back the sword, so it's not everything you do necessarily goes to waste, but you have to sort of reinvent the wheel and match those visual cues. So everyone's picking up dark fantasy, action reads, and paranormal romance mixes. They're looking for covers that look like this right now. and it's interesting because at the same time, YA went from just symbols, right, to adding people back on the cover.
Yeah,
And I
no,
have
it's you have to, if we say nothing else, you have to watch the trends,
yeah.
because
So
those
that
were
was
the
the
first
early.
versions of those young adult stories, very typical. And now,
There we go.
you know,
So yeah,
and
it's
here's
wild.
the thing with covers is, one, there's AI out there now, and you have to be especially careful, even if you purchase images and stuff, that you really turn that flag on that says it's not AI, right? Because all of these places you upload your book make you sign, basically make you
Yeah,
agree that there's no
agree.
AI in the content of your book. And
And
that's a
we're
whole
seeing
separate
those.
episode.
We're seeing those disclosures on Amazon, on Ingram, on Drafted Digital. They've all added a, does this, is your cover made with AI? Yes or no? Is the content made with AI? Yes or no? And I am betting, and this is a prediction. You ready for my
Ooh, I
prediction
love
for this?
predictions.
And of course, I've been reading a lot of AI legal articles lately, thanks to work, the day job. They're getting ready to instill some very interesting laws and regulations involving AI. It may be another 6 months, it may be another year. I don't know. Depends how fast they're moving, right? But all these companies are adding these, collecting that data. And what's going to happen, it's going to be similar to that whole Amazon changing their review policy chaos that we saw, or the time that they changed their erotica alignment with everything, right? They're going to go back through and see who disclosed it or not. And they're going to start tagging what's AI or not. And much like what the stock photo companies are already doing, we're going to have the ability to search for products that have AI usage in it or not as a sellable, buyable product. And I think that's a great way of handling it, because some of us don't care, some of us do care, you know. Um, and I think that's what we're going to see. But they're also going to hold people more accountable, or also have a scrubbing system to make sure that anything that is marked AI has a means of being scrubbed for plagiarism at the same time. So I
Oh yeah,
think
no,
that's
that
what they're
needs to
gearing
happen.
up
I
to
think
do.
that's the inherent danger in the way AI is. It's one thing if you're training the system so it can develop something on its own, but when you're asking it for something and its solution is to go out and scrape everything that's out there to come back with whatever that is, that's where the problem comes in with stolen art, stolen writing, things like that. Because it went, oh, you want to write a book about deadly clowns? Well, cool. We'll take Stephen King's It, and we'll take Jeff Strand's, killer clowns and mush them together, and bam, you have a clown book.
The clowns
And
from
then
outer
you go, wait
space.
a minute, I've read most of this book before, right? So
Right.
that's the danger. But talking about covers, here's some advice out there for people who are, one, either cover designers or also authors. When you're looking at your cover, one of the things we always recommend for authors to do is go look on Amazon, Barnes and Noble, these places, for the best sellers in the genre that you write. What do they look like? And when were they published, right? So if you look and you go, oh, this has been number one, like if you probably look up Pet Cemetery, it's been number one forever on different horror, book lists. Like that just happens. But go, what is hot and trending right now? And a great example of this that I saw is the Puck. Is it Puck You, Puck This? It's that
Looking around.
Pucky romance. What? Puck
Mhm.
Around? Yeah. And you go look, and that particular cover has a little skyline image in the background, and it's all crackly, looks kind of like ice, and
Ice.
has a hockey puck on it, I think.
And
And
it's got the typical romance script for the
yeah,
title
typical
font.
romance
Yep.
script. But what you then saw was everybody making that same exact cover. The problem is you can't make the same exact cover. What you do have to figure out, though, is how do you make it similar so it hits the same notes? So when people are looking at Puck this and they love that, or Puck off, or Puck around, whatever the, sorry, I'm saying it horribly wrong. But when you look at that, because it was a top seller in hockey romance, right? That your book
And then the tidal wave of mimicked covers or almost identical covers was nightmarish in some cases.
It was, but you have to find ones that you go, okay, what are the pieces I need to take from this to create a cover that people look and go, oh, I like this best-selling book. Look at this cover. I will like
Identify
it too.
it as hockey romance, and you needed to identify your book as hockey romance. And that's part of the challenge, right? Like when I hold up this new Cedric cover, we've seen covers very similar with this pattern. And you choose a font of your own making. You try to be unique with those tiny elements in the background, and how you implement them. Other things that people I think are missing on their covers as of late, they're oversimplifying, right?
Yeah.
Just title and their name and nothing else. If you've won an award, add award-winning author above your name or below it someplace. If the book has won an award, put that little seal. They usually provide digital seals, and save yourself that, what is it, like $75 to $100 for like a roll of the and then it's usually too big, so it's kind of crazy. So like that's a great way of implementing that and making that stand out. Then you have more control over it, right? Take a little quote, a little snippet from your book or from a reviewer, right? And put it someplace on there that's catching. Also, be consistent with your spine, right? Librarians will love you if you always have the number for this. If you're a series writer, especially, have the number of what order this book falls in. It doesn't necessarily have to be on the front or back of the book, but the spine is a must. I can't tell you how many times me and Erica have been to the American Library Association conference, and I'm like, please, for the love of God, for the nth time that we've been to this conference, will someone listen to our cries?
And it's the reason the libraries want it too, and I think we've all encountered this, where I actually had that happen the other day. I was in a store and I saw a book, and I was like, I picked it up and I'm literally looking through the entire book, and I'm like, I know this is in this series, but what number is it? And I don't have it in front of me, but it was book 3. It was book 3. There was no way for me to know it was book 3. I was like, I give up.
It's frustrating.
Irritating.
Now, a new thing that's coming up for designers that you should know is this barcode should always be in this bottom right corner, because now they've automated a lot of shipping processes and packing processes, and they will reject a book now if it's not in this same corner aspect, right? And then another thing is, whether it's your publisher or you as an author, make a little logo that tags on the bottom that with your socials, so they know where to find your stuff.
Even and if nothing else, just your website, if that can direct them somewhere else, do that, because websites are very solid things. So even, like we saw people leave Twitter/X and move over to like Blue Sky. Well, you don't have to have your Twitter handle on all the books, but have your website on all the books. Like that is something that people can then find you and follow you for more content, more book. I mean, it's so vital. And then if you're doing, do you have one of the hardcovers to kind of go over some options with the flap? I know I'm putting you on
putting me on the spot, Erica.
Oh, that's okay. We can do hardcovers another time, but it's just be willing to, in a few years, look at your book right out there and be willing to redo the cover and not be offended or fall in love with some symbology you want on it. Because like, here's one of our hardcovers. This one happens to be again a paranormal romance, but when you're doing this, you want to make sure you have the bio and preferably a picture or the image that represents you. And then again, your socials. Can you flip back to the other side?
Yeah.
The socials are there on the bottom. How to get a hold of the author, or the publisher, whichever way you want to do it. And then the other side is the blurb.
Right, because now
Right?
you can switch out from blurb to quotes from your reviewers on this back cover area, right?
Yeah.
And free up that real estate. And also, don't be afraid to change up the design underneath. Like, utilize that space. And again, the spine's still intact. We find that a lot of, like I said, librarians and people who work with books every day find a lot of relief in that.
Yes. And then the other thing that's really heavily recommended before we wrap up is if you are doing a series, you should keep in that series at least. And this is something, like we just talked about Stephen King, but if you look at, Stephen King, some of these guys, their names are the same, right? And I'm going to share my screen again to give you an idea of what we're talking about. So when you're like, oh, you mean? So if you look, the way they do Stephen is Stephen and then King really, really big. King really, really big. If you look, there's a consistency with how King is laid out. And you see this a lot with Dean Koontz, for instance. His name is the same on every single
James Patterson.
James Patterson. And the reason is because without even you realizing it, your mental thing goes, that's a James Patterson book. That's a Dean Koontz book. That's
Nora
Stephen
Roberts
book.
is another great one. She's written
your
super variety.
author name, then the same font on your books, unless it's totally different genres, is a very smart move. And then making sure your books hold up nicely together and look good together. And you can look at them and go, these are in the same series. Even if you don't have the series number on it, these are in the same series. If they look completely out of whack, then people will go, they don't look like they're in the same series.
Like,
these are, look, those look like they're in the same series. You have that same symbolism on the covers. And even though, that happens to be a young adult trilogy, you look and go, these books belong in the same thing. You do not want to do stuff where there's some symbolism that you have or something you're in love with, and you have to have it on the cover. And there's a lot of things people don't realize. Like, when people put couples on the cover and they go, well, the girl doesn't have blonde hair. Nobody goes back to the cover of the book and goes, oh my gosh, I thought she had brown hair. That's not a thing. I mean, if you can get the picture, but it's more the symbolism.
Things could be photoshopped to change the hair color too. So it's, and now that with all the different tools they have on that side, it's gotten even easier to do stuff like that.
Yes, exactly. So, I think that it's something that we all can sort of look at. It's something we can do together. If you don't know the direction, find cover artists that you like out there, such as Valerie, and reach out and go, hey, I want some input. The other thing is, do not overpay for a cover. Not that art shouldn't be paid for, but be very, very careful you don't spend $2,000 on a cover unless you're Stephen King, because it's going to take a lot of book sales to make up that cover. So something to think about, and we will do what are some good cost ranges for books here in the future on one of our episodes. But
being mindful, there's a difference between having a cover done with photo stock, or so a lot of these really great popular cover artists usually have either online stores or Facebook groups, and their pre-mades could be as cheap as $50 sometimes for just the ebook, right? So if I wouldn't go any further than 500, depending on the popularity of who you're going with and the complexity of the cover you want created, right? Yeah. And you have to be mindful. 500 and below, we're looking at professionally pulled together stock photos. So that's a lot like these covers.
Yeah.
That's how these are pieced together. That's how I've pieced those together. Same thing with this. But then you have the next level up would be combining a artist with cover design. This is going to be a bigger bill because an artist isn't cheap if you want a decent one or a good one. And that is a separate cost than a cover. I do not recommend doing if you find someone who's both an artist and cover designer, you will have to really vet that process and ask their other clients how that experience was, because that's very complicated. But art by itself done by someone that a specific way, work with your cover designer to know what type of art they need to get their job done first. Don't just say, here's some art, and they're looking at it and you're like, this is in landscape, and I'm going to have to cut off like a third of this to make it the front cover. And you're like, no, make all of it fit. And now we went from people who would be shadowed, 2/3 of the book cover to being teeny tiny, and it loses its oomph, its punch, right? So be mindful of things like that, right? And of course, sometimes people provide art that'll only fit the front cover and nowhere else. And they're like, what do you mean you can't make this fit the whole cover? And I'm like, oh, first off, it's not high enough DPIs. You start talking technical and I lose them, and they get the glazed look. But
I'm getting the glazed look.
That can cost you, that doubles the cost on an expensive photoshopped or stock photo one. From now you're looking at $1,000+ trying to accommodate both your artist and the cover designer.
Yes. And so it, kind of food for thought on this is, what you can do is to help your cover artist the most is go see, what should it look like? What do you envision? Make sure it's known, but make sure it follows again with the genre and the tropes. Like hold up Queen's Incubus, because the trope for that is
reverse harem dark fantasy.
Yeah.
And it's very erotic.
It has multiple boys on the cover with the girl. So it's something to think about with that.
Pulling the strings on her dress.
Yes. Anyway, with that said, this has been What Writers Should Know. You can check out books and stuff in the links down below in the show notes. Don't forget to like and subscribe. We're doing this twice a week to give you more information on what you should know as an author out there. Valerie, do you have any final words?
If you're looking for me and my books, willisauthor.com is a great place. Most of the social media is Willis Author. So be sure to subscribe on all my channels if you want to follow more of this and similar type of stuff, or updates on what I'm doing as an author. And I usually give advice there as well.
Yes. So we're here. We want to help. So we hope you have a wonderful day. Don't forget, we know writing is hard, and we will see you next time.